the Edinburgh Live Guide Tour. My name is Blair, the name of the driver is Luis, and we're very happy to have you with us. Today's tour should last approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes. We'll be getting underway just shortly.
Somebody's trying to get on.
Is there?
Yeah.
That's usually why I leave it till the last minute before my explanation. Anyway, like I was saying, welcome on board the bus. Just a couple of health and safety things. First of all, please remain seated while the bus is in motion. If you wish to get off at any of the stops along the route, if you're up on the top deck, just raise your hand and let me know. If you're down on the bottom deck, just hit the red stop button and we will let you off at the nearest available stop.
Just for a second while we sit down.
There you go.
Is it possible for the driver to stop while we sit down?
They are stopped. And the name of the sculptor was Sir John Steele. The building on the right hand side behind the statue is General Register House. That's one of the oldest archive buildings in the British Isles. It contains all the genealogical records for the whole of Scotland. Every birth, marriage and death is recorded in there. Here on the left hand side you've got the Waverley Station, one of the oldest and largest train stations in Scotland, named after the Waverley novels of Sir Walter Scott. Second busiest train station in Scotland after Glasgow Central. On the left hand side you've got the Scott Monument, which is just over 200 feet tall. It's the second tallest monument to a writer in the world. You can actually go up that monument. I wouldn't recommend it though if you're claustrophobic. It's a bit of a tight squeeze on the inside. And there's a statue of Walter Scott with his beloved deerhound Maida. Walter Scott is very important in Scotland's history. He was essentially the man who created the tourism industry through the popularity of his Waverley novels. And here on the right hand side we've got Romaines in Patterson and the Walter Scott Tea Room. That's the place to go for your souvenirs and your gifts. Two reasons for that. First of all, that shop's open till 11 o'clock this evening. Second of all, you get a 10% discount in there with your bus tickets off all retail purchases except for alcohol. On the left hand side you've got the National Galleries of Scotland, both open till 5 o'clock this evening. At the moment I think they're both free of charge actually. And here on the left hand side you've got Princess Street Gardens, open till 9 o'clock this evening. And also on the left hand side you can see all the upcoming shows for the Fringe Festival. There's a castle up there on the left hand side, open till 6 o'clock this evening. Last entry is at 5 o'clock. If you're looking to go into the castle today, wouldn't fancy your chances, but you might still be able to get tickets off the bus drivers or the ticket sellers, because we do have allocated tickets for certain times throughout the day. So if you're still looking to get to the castle today, next time we stop, which is just around the corner, you can maybe nick downstairs and ask the driver if there's any tickets left. During Victorian times, as the Georgian New Town expanded further out, people started moving further and further away from the old town. So, stop here and let folk off. Just a reminder, this is a stop for Frederick Street, the Georgian New Town, Princess Street and Princess Street. And straight ahead you've got the statue of Pitt the Younger. He was our youngest ever Prime Minister. Many historians these days consider him to have been one of our top 10 Prime Ministers in history. Very, very good Prime Minister. He came to office at the age of 24 years old. So he's still a young man in his mid-20s. He spent almost 19 years of his life in the hot chair. He died less than 2 years into his second term in office in 1806. He was only 46 years old when he died. Imagine the strain and the pressure that he was under, being Prime Minister for almost half of his life. He helped to stabilise Britain's economy during the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. He was also a lifelong bachelor. His father, Pitt the Elder, was also Prime Minister. In fact, Pittsburgh over in the United States is named after him. The street on either side here is George Street, named after King George III, who was on the throne from from 1760 to 1820. That's St. Stephen's Church down at the bottom there. That building has the longest pendulum clock of any church in Europe, 162 feet high. And just beyond the church, off in the distance, you can see the Kingdom of Fife across the other side of the River Forth. Now here on the right hand side you've got the Queen Street Gardens, which are private gardens these days. They were built around about the 1820s, and in order to access these gardens you need to live somewhere round about here, one of the streets in this area, and you need to pay an annual subscription to get access to the keys to let yourself in. Streets. On the left hand side you've got the Spanish consulate, and in a few moments on the right hand side you'll see the Oxford Bar, which is the favourite pub of local author Ian Rankin, who's based here in Edinburgh, the man who wrote the Inspector Rebus novels. Straight ahead you've got the castle once again. That's the old hospital building. Nowadays that's actually a museum. In fact, that's mostly what the castle is these days, is a series of museums and memorials and monuments, such as the Scottish National War Memorial. You also see Mons Megan there, the gigantic cannon, largest in the world when it was built several years ago, well, several centuries ago I should really say. And St Margaret's Chapel, which is the oldest building and the oldest church in Edinburgh, dating back to the 12th century. This is stop number 3. Anybody getting off at this stop? You can get off here for George Street and Charlotte Square. Nope, nobody's getting off at this stop. Also on the right hand side you've got the blue door for the Georgian House. You get a £2 discount in there with your Edinburgh bus tour ticket. That's a snapshot back in time to 1796 even, when you go in there, from the point of view of the Lawnmarket family, an aristocratic family from the Highlands of Scotland. This was their Edinburgh townhouse. Now Charlotte Square back in the 1790s and the early 1800s was the real jewel in the crown of the Georgian New Town. This was where the wealthy and the influential and the aristocrats, the nobility, they all lived round about here. This was the place to live. On the right hand side, number 14 South Charlotte Street is where Alexander Graham Bell was born in March of 1847. That blue door there on the right hand side, the inventor of the telephone. And as you can see straight ahead you've got the West End Arts and Crafts Fair, running till 6 PM this evening and operating till August 27th. So I might get some local bargains. Switch off my microphone there because I nearly swore. Now with your Edinburgh bus tours ticket you can get a 10% discount off the Journey of Flavour tour, which I think is their flagship tour because you see it advertised all over Edinburgh. It's a very, very good tour actually. I've been on it myself. It's all about the history of the Walker family and the Walker brand. And the tour lasts about 90 minutes. At the end of the tour, the last half an hour, you go to a tasting room, you get a couple of free samples and then it's off to the gift shop. But it's all about mixology as they call it. It's about different types of blended whisky from the Highlands of Scotland. Now stop number 4 is coming up, which is the stop for Johnny Walker, the Waldorf Astoria on the right hand side, Arts and Crafts Fair here on the left, or St Cuthbert's. Anybody getting off at stop 4? This stop. No one's getting off at this stop. So that's the oldest, oh hang on, somebody downstairs is I think. On the left hand side that is the oldest Christian site in Edinburgh, St Cuthbert's Church. As far as I'm aware that's the 3rd oldest Christian site in Scotland overall. Whithorn Abbey and Iona Abbey are older. There's not many sites in Scotland that are older than St Cuthbert's. There's been a chapel down in the valley down there since the 7th century.
Kirkhill.
There's a loophole in the law. It was against the law to disturb a grave, and it was against the law to rob anything off a body, but it wasn't actually against the law to possess one. That's why they built the watchtowers, to catch them in the act. Because once they took possession of the body and got everything off the body, they could walk past every policeman in Edinburgh, and the most they would get was a fine. Considering they were getting £7 to £10 a body, it was worth the risk. You had to catch them in the act. That's why they built the watchtowers. On the left-hand side, you've got the Usher Hall, which dates back to 1914. Named after a man called Andrew Usher. He specialised in blended whiskey distilling. That's how he made his entire fortune, even though he was completely teetotal. He never touched the stuff. In fact, apparently he had it written into the charter for the Usher Hall itself, named after him, that no alcohol was to be served. Well, they abandoned that law in the 1980s. They've got about 7 bars in there now. And you might have seen it's home to the International Festival, at least it's one of the main venues, along with the Royal Lyceum Theatre. I'd say Usher Hall is probably the central headquarters for the International. So this is Bread Street. This is where all the bakers in Edinburgh were relocated in the 1600s outside the walls of the city for safety reasons. On the left hand side you'll see a good view of the castle. And we'll see the castle a couple more times before we get to stop number 8, which is the stop for the Lawnmarket. Now it's not actually in the Lawnmarket, it's been moved down to Johnson Terrace, but don't worry, we'll still capture no problem. I'll let you know when we get near to the castle. Lots of bookshops and cafes around here. As you can see, you get 20% student discounts with your student cards, so that brush your teeth after you've been in there. On the right hand side, coming up, Armchair Books, as I mentioned, now Quinn's Cafe here on the right hand side, the Red Cafe. That's open from 8 in the morning to 2 p.m. TripAdvisor last year recommended this cafe as the best place in Edinburgh to go for breakfast. It almost always gets 5-star ratings. The trouble is it's only open until 2 o'clock, despite the fact it says all day breakfast on the side. My definition of all day would be all day, but theirs is 2 p.m. And then on the left hand side you've got the Maison de Moggy, the Cat Cafe, very, very popular. If you're going in there you need to pre-book in advance. This is stop number 5. Anyone getting off at this stop? Nope. This is the Grassmarket stop. And this used to be the cattle and the livestock market here in Edinburgh. From around about the middle of the 16th century, right up until 1911. This was also the corn exchange as well. So this is where the cattle drovers and the farmers would bring their livestock to the markets on the weekends. The left hand side coming up, you'll see the Last Drop. And that's the pub where condemned prisoners were given their last drink, their last meal before they would be publicly executed. Hangings took place here down in the 16 and 1700s. You can see the hangman's noose at the windows there, a dead giveaway as to the function of the pub. Give you a little bit of courage before facing the gallows. Now, apparently being hanged is not really that bad. If you listen to the commentary in the movie Braveheart on the DVD, Mel Gibson, he accidentally hanged himself. And he said you're out like a light. You feel absolutely nothing. So I guess it wasn't that bad. This was a method of execution called the short drop, which is death by strangulation. And like I say, the lights go out pretty quick. On the left hand side, you've got Victoria Street, which is the most photographed street in the whole town. In fact, it's probably the most photographed street in Edinburgh overall. I guarantee you go there any time of the day or the night and you'll see people taking pictures. We've also got the Harry Potter merchandise shop about halfway up. Now, back in the 1990s, J.K. Rowling, the author behind the Harry Potter books, she lived in the area. Apparently that was one of the inspirations for Diagon Alley. Though I'm thinking this street probably was as well, the Cowgate here on the left hand side, which is where you find a lot of the nightclubs and the hostels like the one on the left hand side. Lots of student hostels around about this area. This is the oldest graveyard in Scotland here on the right hand side, Greyfriars, which dates back to 1562. The name actually comes from the order of the Greyfriars back in the 1400s. They were a Catholic medicinal order from the Netherlands who left Scotland during the Reformation, as they were Catholic by denomination when they became Protestant. And here on the left hand side you'll see the statue of the adorable little terrier Bobby. People are always taking his picture and rubbing his nose for luck, though we don't encourage that because it just means we keep having to replace his nose every couple of years. And the story of Greyfriars Bobby goes back to the 1850s when a man called John Gray, or Old Jock, came to Edinburgh. He used to patrol round about the Grassmarket and Greyfriars, and he died in 1858 at the age of 42. They called him Old Jock and he was in his early 40s. Lifespan back in those days was about in his 30s. Now, after Old Jock passed away, little Bobby remained by his master's grave for the next 14 years until he died in 1872. He was even made an honorary citizen 5 years before he died in 1867 by William Chambers. If you go to stop number 9, that's Chambers Street, which is named after him, and you'll see his statue right outside the front entrance to the National Museum of Scotland. He was the Lord Provost at the time, meaning he was the head of the town council. In other words, he was the mayor. You can learn more about Bobby in two places: Greyfriars Church, which is open to the public, or the Museum of Edinburgh at stop number 11, open till 5 o'clock. Here on the left hand side you've got the old graduation hall and the old medical school on the left hand side. You can see all the upcoming shows here on the left hand side as well, for the underbelly. And on the left coming up you'll see the Edinburgh Futures Institute that's currently being constructed. That is the skeleton of the old hospital building, the old Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, which was moved about 20 years ago further south. So this is a scientific research institute there. And the Festival Bookshop, that used to be a fire station. Edinburgh was the first city in the world to establish a municipal firefighting service in 1824. Municipal meaning citywide. And it was established under the leadership of a man called Jim Braidwood, who's got a statue outside of St Giles Cathedral, which has been there since 2008. He unified 6 competing insurance companies to form the world's first municipal fire service, and he was able to save the old town of Edinburgh and the Royal Mile from burning down to a pile of ashes in the Great Fire of November of 1824, which almost destroyed iconic buildings such as the Tronkirk and also St Giles Cathedral. Hence the reason why his statue is located there. That was in 1824. Now in 1834 he went down to London and even saved Westminster Palace and the House of Lords from burning down. Isn't it interesting how on November 5th we celebrate Guy Fawkes, who almost burned Parliament down and blew it up, and yet the man who saved Parliament, nobody knows anything about him. Braidwood died in 1861 fighting a fire near the wharfs. That's the big warehouses along the River Thames. He died in that fire when a building crushed him to death, and he was so respected by this lady he was given a magnificent funeral. If you look to the right, there's Queen Victoria at the top of the Queen's Nursing Institute for Scotland. And when Braidwood died, Queen Victoria herself expressed her condolences to Braidwood's widow for his service and gratitude. And today he's considered to be the father of modern British firefighting. Many techniques and many of the modern types of equipment we use come from Braidwood. This is stop number 7 for the car park on the left hand side. Now the castle stop's the next one after this. This is often mistaken for the castle stop, and it's a very easy mistake to make when you look at the map, but the castle's actually the next one. By the way, if you're here tomorrow, that's where they have the farmers market there on the King's Stable Road until about 1:30 in the afternoon. This is Johnson Terrace. This road was built in the 1830s. This is an artificial access road up to the castle that you see up there on the left hand side. There's the Royal Palace within Edinburgh Castle. That's where you find the Honours of Scotland, which not too long ago were presented to King Charles III for his Scottish coronation at St Giles. And there's the stadium up there on the Esplanade on the left. That's a temporary stadium, by the way, and no, that's not Murrayfield. Somebody asked me that yesterday. Murrayfield's quite a bit bigger than that. That's the stadium for the Tattoo, which is a military procession involving bands from all over the world, mainly military bands, and each show lasts just over an hour. Anyone getting off for the castle? Yep, there's a few still getting off Sorry, there's a few folk getting off at this stop, Louise. If you are getting off at this stop, thank you very much for joining us. And just a reminder that the bus goes around every 12 minutes. The last bus will get up here about 6:30 to join us. My name is Blair. The name of the driver is Louise. We're about to head into the Lawnmarket, which was historically the cloth and linen market here in Edinburgh, one of the 15 major markets throughout the city. Grassmarket was the livestock market, so this was the clothes market. There's the hub on the left hand side, the headquarters for the International Festival. On the left hand side you've got the Castle Hill. And that takes you up to the Scotch Whisky Experience and the Camera Obscura. And you get discounts for both those attractions with your bus ticket. You get 10% off the tours of the Scotch Whisky if it's not fully booked. And the Camera Obscura, by the way, that's what we're checking out because it's open a lot later than many attractions in Edinburgh. It's the world of holograms and illusions. And that's a good place to take the kids. Good family day out. And, you can see Edinburgh in live time at the top using nothing but lights and mirrors. You can see across the Princes Street and everything. It's pretty awesome actually. Also here on the left hand side you've got Gladstone's Land, and you get not one but two discounts in there with your Edinburgh Bus Tours ticket. You get £1.50 off the admission price into the museum, and you get a 10% discount for the ice cream parlour as well. Run by the National Trust, that's the same organisation that runs the Georgian House over in Charlotte Square. On the left hand side, that's the path of the Blue Dragons that takes you to the Writers' Museum and also Markers Court. The Writers' Museum is all about the lives and legacies of Walter Scott, Robert Burns and Robert Louis Stevenson. And it's open from 10 AM to 5 PM every single day. It's just down there on the left hand side. The Markers Court has quotations written into the slabs going back over 600 years in English, Gaelic and Scots. Sometimes asked if Scots is a different language to English, to which I'm replying, well, I'll do the rest of the tour in Scots if you like, and we'll see how much you understand. There's an argument that it is, because Scots is actually composed of lots of different words and phrases from different languages, like Norse, Latin, Danish, Gaelic. On the left hand side you've got St Giles Cathedral, which is open until 6 PM. And also on the left hand side we've got the French Institute, which is home to the Edinburgh International Art Festival, and that's also a great place to go for lunch as well. Easily overlooked as well, because there's a cinema and a library in there. You can learn French in there if you're so inclined. This is yeah, that's Victoria Street just on the right, we just passed. This is the George IV Bridge. Now if you look to the right or the left, you'll see down to the Cowgate below. We're about 50 feet high at the moment.
Wow.
There are 6 artificial bridges in Edinburgh that go over valleys down below instead of rivers, and this is one of them. This bridge was opened in 1836. It was designed by a man called Thomas Hamilton, and it's named after King George IV, who visited Edinburgh in 1822. He was the first monarch to visit Scotland since the coronation of King Charles II in 1651. And more streets in Edinburgh are named after him than anyone else. This is stop number 9 coming up for Greyfriars, over there on the right hand side. You can actually go into the church, by the way, that's open to the public. There's a lovely museum and shop in there. You can also get off at this stop for the National Museum as well here on the right hand side. Anybody getting off at this stop? Yep, a few folk getting off here, Louise, thank you. Very wise choice. This is the #1 attraction in Scotland according to Visit Scotland. It's ranked higher than Edinburgh Castle, which is number 2. The National Museum is open 7 days a week from 10 o'clock in the morning to 5 PM. But also he and his brother Robert Chambers gave us one of the first English dictionaries in the world, the Chambers Dictionary, and that statue also there on the right is of William Henry Playfair, one of our greatest architects. I would say he is our greatest architect, personally. I mentioned Robert Adam earlier on. He was the man who designed General Register House right at the very beginning of the tour at Waterloo Place. He also designed Charlotte Square. as well as the outside of this building on the right. Unfortunately, as I think I mentioned earlier, he died in 1792, so he didn't actually live to see the old college complete. In fact, William Playfair had to design the interior 30 years later, and it blends in so seamlessly, the outside and the inside. You'd never really guess it's two different architects with two very different styles. It's a real masterpiece of architectural engineering. On the left hand side, you've got the George IV Bridge and the Cowgate. So we were just on that bridge 5 minutes ago. You can see down, well, normally the billboards weren't there, you can see down to the Cowgate below. So we're actually about 30 or 40 feet high at the moment. This bridge is a lot older than the George IV Bridge. This bridge dates back to the 1780s. I think that, yeah, I'm pretty sure there was an Act of Parliament. It was passed in 1785. The steeple even caught fire. Even the bell melted. So imagine how intense the fire was. But the building itself managed to survive thanks to bravery. And this church has been here since the middle of the 17th century, and it had a congregation right up until the 1950s. So approximately 300 years it was an active church. These days it's used as an information centre, for exhibitions, for concerts. They always find it used for the Kirk. There have been 2 attempts in the past to demolish it, but it's a listed building, so they can't get rid of it. This is stop number 10 coming up for the Museum of Childhood on the right, and the John Knox House on the left. Anybody getting off at this stop? Nope, doesn't seem like it. That's one of the oldest museums in the world there on the right hand side, the Museum of Childhood, dedicated to the subject of childhood. So where you get to see how children used to grow up in Edwardian, Georgian and Victorian times. And it's completely free of charge, open from 10 AM in the morning to 5 PM. Same as the National Museum. On the left hand side, the John Knox House is privately owned and operated by the Church of Scotland, so you do actually need to pay to get in, but I would still recommend it because it provides a very, very good insight into the life of John Knox and the history of the Scottish Reformation in the 16th century. It's actually a very good museum. I've been in there before. In fact, I went in my uniform hoping to let me in for free. Did they? Not by the Church of Scotland, of course not. Still charged me full price. But I don't regret it. It's a very good museum. You do the self-guided tour in there. And you get to learn different stages of John Knox's life and his career. We call him the Great Scottish Divine. In fact, if you go through the Glasgow, just opposite Glasgow Cathedral, they've got a huge statue of John Knox on top of the necropolis. The little figure there on the left-hand side is supposed to represent Moses kneeling before God in Greek, Latin and English. And there on the left-hand side you've got the Scottish Storytelling Centre. You can see the fringe shows. There on the left-hand side being advertised for the Nettabow Theatre, looking very, very busy indeed. And you've got the lovely little art gallery there as well. Here on the right-hand side you've got the World's End Pub, because this was the historical end of Edinburgh. You look there to the right-hand side, you can see the old town walls beyond the traffic lights. So the Canongate from the traffic lights here down to Holyrood Palace. This was a separate town from the rest of Edinburgh until 1856. This is where the wealthy lived beyond the medieval town walls. All the members of the aristocracy, wealthy merchants. On the right hand side, that's where you find Kilwinning Lodge number 2, one of the oldest Masonic lodges in the world, dating all the way back to the 17th century. Stop number 11 is our next stop. This is a stop for the Canongate Church, the Museum of Edinburgh and the People's Story. Open till 5 o'clock. Anyone getting off at this stop? Yep, got the phone getting off here, Louise, thank you. Our next stop, which is a stop for the Scottish Parliament and Holyrood Palace. Last entry into both is at 4:30 this afternoon. Anybody getting off at the next stop? Yep, somebody's getting off at this next one. The Scottish Parliament is on the right and Holyrood Palace is straight ahead, straight down at the bottom.
us much about Holyrood or not? Because we wouldn't mind visiting it, but we don't really know. I don't know much about it.
Not really.
Is it worth a visit?
Yeah, it's a Parliament complex designed by the Catalonian architect Enrique Morales back in the 1990s. He died in the year 2000 of a brain tumour, unfortunately. So his wife and his design team had to take over the project in his absence. And the Scottish Parliament was opened in 2004 by Queen Elizabeth II. Holyrood Palace dates back to 1498. That's when King James IV decided to build the palace for his wife, Margaret Tudor, the sister of King Henry VIII, as he felt that the castle that is up at the top was too exposed, and the old guest house was actually transformed into the palace that you see today during the reigns of James IV and his son King James V of Scotland. In fact, the shape of the palace came from the reign of James V, as he employed French masons to design Holyrood Palace like a French Renaissance chateau in order to impress his wife, Mary de Guise, the mother of Mary Queen of Scots. On the right hand side you've got the pools of water representing Scotland's freshwater lochs or lakes. There are over 30,000 lochs in Scotland. This is Holyrood Park straight ahead, which is these days a public park. It started off as a sanctuary for the monks and the abbots all around about here. In fact, the term Holyrood, sometimes mistaken for Hollywood, Holyrood means Holy Cross, and it's partially named after the fact that the monks and the abbots had their headquarters down here, but really it actually comes from Queen Margaret of Scotland, otherwise known as Saint Margaret, the mother of King David I. As she was said to have possessed a piece of the true cross upon which Christ was crucified, hence Holyrood's Holy Cross. That's where the name actually comes from. Stop 13 is coming up on the right hand side. This is the Stop for Dynamic Earth, which is a scientific and geological exhibition all about the history of the formation of the planet Earth. And if you're planning on visiting this exhibition, you can get a discount from the driver. Dynamic Earth is aimed mostly at younger audiences, school children and teenagers. That's the target audience for Dynamic Earth. Anybody getting off at this stop? Stop 13. Nope, no one's getting off here. There's also a causeway, a path here on the left hand side that takes you through to the palace, the Parliament and the park. Just there on the left hand side. And Dynamic Earth was created as part of the Millennium Project here in Edinburgh back in the late 1990s. Might be why it looks a bit like the Millennium Dome, otherwise known as the O2 Arena, kind of the same style of architecture. The National Lottery Fund was behind both projects. This time of year is a good idea to everywhere. On the right hand side you've got the back of the Scottish Parliament. Those odd shapes over the windows there are supposed to symbolise transparency. The idea being that they're curtains being rolled back so you can see inside. The Scottish Parliament is open 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, closed on Sundays. You get a discount in there with your bus ticket. You get 10% off for the cafe, I think it is. You can see the crowds over the lampposts as we get further down, symbolising that we're entering royal territory. Though Holyrood Park was given to the people and city of Edinburgh as a millennium gift by Queen Elizabeth II back in 1999. The Stuart dynasty used to hunt in Holyrood Park in the 16th century. King James V, Mary Queen of Scots and James VI all hunted in here. They all hunted deer and other game. There's not much wildlife in there these days to speak of, apart from squirrels and crows and things like that, and rabbits maybe. However, if you go up to Dunsapie Loch, which is right up at the very, very top of Holyrood Park, you'll see 2 sea otters, and it's a complete mystery how they got there, who put them there, or why. But There they are nevertheless. They seem happy enough. Here on the right hand side is where they have the Royal Garden Party, typically at the end of June or the beginning of July most years. And on the right hand side you've got the former stable block for the cafe at the Palace. And if you go there with your bus tickets, remember to show it if you purchase a hot drink like a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and you get a sample of short bread shaped like a crown. And on the right hand side beyond the gates you'll find the apartments of Mary Queen of Scots, and further back the ruins of Holyrood Abbey, which go all the way back to the 12th century. As I mentioned before, originally Holyrood Palace was the guest house for Holyrood Abbey. That's how it started off. Stop 14 is coming up for the bathhouse. Anybody getting off at this stop? Nope, no one's getting off here. Let's see if anyone's getting on. Probably. We're about to head under the Edinburgh-London Railway Bridge. If you're at the back of the bus, watch out for the pigeons. We call this the Pigeon Palace, you'll find out why. See them all up there? Back in Georgian times we used to eat pigeons. In fact, if you go to certain restaurants in Edinburgh you can still order them off the menu. Believe it or not. The train from Edinburgh to London these days takes about 4.5 to 5 hours. So better than the stagecoach service, which took about 12 days. And it was so dangerous you had to sign your last will and testament before they let you leave. It was from him, by the way, that you get expressions like wingman, because he had wings on his helmet. On the left hand side, have a look out for the rabbits. There's 1, 2, 3. I saw about 15 of them little things. On the left hand side you can see the top of Arthur's Seat is 823 feet to the very top of the summit there for the old extinct volcano. It takes about an hour to reach the very top from the bottom. The views from up there are absolutely breathtaking. On the one side you can see across to the Bash Rock and North Berwick Law. On the other side down to the Pentlands and the Lammermuir Hills, which are on the borderlands with England. Here on the right hand side is Regent Terrace, and coming up you'll see the Swiss, there we go, there's the Swiss consulate and the American consulate, and that's a very expensive street to live. It's about £1.5 million for the average property up there. That's not the most expensive, that's the average price. And stop 15 is coming up for the monument, the Burns Monument on the left. Anyone getting off here? Nope. If you're getting off for Calton Hill, you better just join me on the bus. We'll drop you off at the foot of Calton Hill. This building here on the right hand side is the old Royal High School, dating back to 1829, and it's lay abandoned since the late 60s, though St Mary's School of Music is said to be moving in the next couple of years. Fingers crossed for that. Here on the right hand side is Calton Hill, and up at the very top you've got the Nelson's Monument, built to commemorate the victory of Admiral Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. One of the most important naval engagements of the Napoleonic Wars. That's St Andrew's House on the left hand side, the Scottish Government offices here in Edinburgh, built in the 1930s. And finally here on the right hand side you have the steps leading up to the top of Calton Hill. It takes about 10 minutes to reach the summit. So thank you very much for joining us. My name was Blair, and the name of the driver was Luis. Feel free, by the way, to remain on board the bus if you want to go round again. There may be a green bus further down, I can't really see from here, but if not, you can get back on this bus. Let's see, what time is it? I'll be able to tell you when the next one leaves. So the next bus will leave in about 11 minutes time.